Thank you, Phil, and good morning to everyone. I also would like to thank you, ILSI North America, for the chance to be addressing you here today. Thank you very much. Like Phil mentioned, my topic today is assessing credibility establishing the expert process authority. You already heard all the fun stuff, the validation, the surrogates, the log reduction, the exciting stuff. This topic is a little drier, so my mission today is to keep you awake until Dunsink gets up here. So I'll try to do my best on that. The process authority concept, and I'll start by doing a little bit of history and explaining the roots of the processing authority concept. It's not a new concept, obviously. It's had its genesis in the low-acid canned food regulations going back to 1973, and they were promulgated as a result of Clostridium botulinum outbreak in a cream sauce soup that caused botulism and a couple of deaths, as well as recall of up to 24 products. So let me start by mentioning the outline of the presentation, how I want to present this to you. Like I said, start by giving you the basics in terms of the regulatory requirements that brought about the concept of processing authority, low-acid canned foods, and then how that concept have migrated to some of the other categories, particularly the HACCP regulations involving meat and poultry, juice HACCP, and seafood HACCP. And then following up with integration into the FSMA area and the comparison between a qualified individual and a process authority, which is a very important one. I think a lot of people are confusing the two terms and what the meaning is, so I hope that we can offer some clarification today. And then the question of assessing credibility. Qualifications, training, do we need a certification? Let's talk about that a little bit. And then new challenges for existing processing authorities such as myself. And by the way, I wish I had been doing this for only 20 years because that would make me 6 years younger, Phil, but that's good. 26 years of being working on this area of processing authority. So let's start with the regulations, low-acid canned food regulations. 21 CFR 113 states the requirements for the process for low-acid foods being established, and notice that I highlighted the shall. That means that it's a mandate of the regulation, must be established by qualified persons having knowledge of thermal processing for low-acid foods and having adequate facilities. I also highlighted adequate facilities because this is a theme that I'm going to hammer over and over. It's impossible for a processing authority to be effective without having the adequate facilities to conduct the type of studies that Tim just talked about a few minutes ago. So you need to have those capabilities. 114, which addresses low-acid foods which are acidified, also requires the use of a processing authority and also specify those requirements. Again, the requirements are specific for the given category of acidification and processing of acidified foods. The California almond growers, and California is always a special place, been there for a long time also. California almond growers are by regulation, Title 7 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 981, requires that almonds produced or processed in California are validated and meet a certain log reduction as presented in the law. And the Almond Board of California administer this program for USDA. The Almond Board of California also has a definition for a process authority, and is even a more extensive one, again requiring expert knowledge of the person in the specific area of interest, which in this case the treatment of almonds. It goes on about the requirement of knowledge of the equipment. Of course, it's very important. You cannot be a great processing authority only doing D&Z values in the laboratory. You need to get out there and understand the equipment. You need to have experience conducting the studies that are used to determine that the processes are delivered adequately, and the ability to determine that enough data has been gathered. This is within the regulations in several different places and in several different regulations. Use ASIP, again, an expert requirement, controlling pathogenic microorganisms, and qualified by training and experience. Both of those requirements are there, training and experience. And so that you can determine that your control measures, if properly implemented, will control pathogens effectively. So let's talk about FSMA. Let's not kid ourselves. That's the main reason we're here talking about this today. And FSMA doesn't address or mentions a processing authority per se, but it talks about a qualified individual, which must do or oversee the preparation of the food safety plan, the validation of the preventive controls, the review of records and implementation and effectiveness of the preventive controls and corrective actions, the reanalysis of the food safety plan, and it specifies that it doesn't have to be an employee of the plant. It could be somebody from a third party or the outside. So when we talk about the qualified individual, how does that compare to the concept of processing authority? Well, the process authority is, function of the process authority is very focused on the kill step for microorganisms. So what we were talking about in terms of microbial reduction. And so whether it's thermal process or chemical treatment of packaging material as is done in aseptic processing, E-beam radiation or UV radiation, which is also used in aseptic extensively, ID critical factors and so on related to that kill step. When we're talking about the qualified individual has holistic responsibilities for all aspects of the food safety plan. So the qualified individual may be working with a processing authority, or the processing authority may be working underneath the responsibilities of the qualified individual to attack the given area. That's been traditionally how we have approached it. Now, more and more as I travel through the world in my function as a processing authority, I get the expectations from many folks out there in the industry that their processing authorities are also their qualified individual, and that may or may not be necessarily the case depending on the qualifications of the individual. So like I said, these two terms are not interchangeable, at least in my opinion. So the qualified individual, as required by FSMA, must complete a standardized curriculum recognized by FDA, or otherwise be qualified by job experience if that experience is equivalent to that offered by the standardized curriculum. And the Food Safety Preventive Control Alliance have been working extensively to develop the curriculum for this, and you can find a draft of the curriculum already online in their website. So regulatory requirements for, so the reason I put this slide up here is to provide some perspective if you look at the HACCP regulations and the number of plants that are impacted or are under the provisions of these regulations, you can see that are quite significant. But when you move on to FSMA, you can see that that number increases dramatically. So when we're looking for folks that can support and provide the expertise necessary in their role as processing authority or qualified individuals, you can see why we're having this discussion today. We need to be able to identify more folks that can do this type of work and make sure that they're qualified to do it. So let's talk about a little bit about what is out there in terms of assessing credibility, the qualifications of processing authority. Going back to the low acid canned food regulations, which are provide the genesis of the processing authority term, these regulations are intended to govern the end product of a processing authority's work, not the person's qualification. So in this area, as far as assessing the processing authority, there's not a whole lot of help there because they focus on the low acid canned food filings, and they evaluate them on their technical and scientific merit only. So they're looking at the end product. Now, under the low acid canned food regulations, you have the advantage that that information is submitted to the agency in advance of starting the process, so it can be evaluated for its scientific merit in advance. FDA may request a review of a person's qualification if they're not familiar with that particular processing authority, but this is not often the case. The Almond Board of California, going to ABC again, they do have a certification program for processing authorities, and this is the only certification program for regulatory mandated certification program that I'm aware of. Under this program, process authorities must submit an application to the Almond Board of California. This application is reviewed by their technical expert review panel, and a determination is made as to whether that process authority be approved to work in the validation of almond processes in California. What goes into that submission into to the Almond Board of California? They ask for a curriculum vitae. They ask for evidence via examples of work done previously of knowledge of product and processing equipment, as well as evidence of experience in conducting studies relevant to the processing of almonds, such as heat penetration, microbial challenge studies, etc. They also ask for evidence of ability to determine if sufficient data has been gathered, and to reference from current or past clients. So that makes a lot of sense. As well as, again, that theme of having adequate facilities. They have to have access to microorganisms that are often used as surrogates in the validation of processes. You have to have access to the equipment and laboratory facilities to make the correlations between surrogate and target organisms, etc. And additional information as requested by ABC for any given submission. Another source of information as far as assessing qualifications of process authority, as Tim mentioned before, is IFTIPS, the Institute for Thermal Process Specialists. They are the association for processing, a professional association for process authority. If you are interested in learning more about process authorities or thinking about becoming one yourself, this is one group that you may want to consider becoming a part of. They have one annual meeting domestically in the US every year and one outside of the US. They got together and put together a document defining a processing authority back in 2011, and they included areas of competency within this document. I would like to highlight some of those. I'm not going to read all of this for you, but I will highlight the main parts of the document. They do define process authority as an individual or group expert in the development, implementation, and evaluation of thermal and or aseptic processes. Keep in mind that this organization is focusing on low acid canned foods, but their expertise and template can be used to expand to many different areas. And they go on to talk about areas of competency on for a processing authority. Knowledge of microbial risk. Let's face it, process authorities are focusing on the microbial kill step, so you better understand the microbiology aspect of it. But just microbiology is not enough. You need to know about the product. You need to understand packaging characteristics. You have to understand commercial equipment and manufacturing procedures. Obviously, you're not going to go very far if your clients are not complying with the regulations under your advice as a processing authority. So you need to be knowledgeable of applicable regulations. And you need to understand the underlying technical and scientific principles under which you are you're placing your control measure. You need to understand the design and methods used to conduct the studies that are going to validate and verify that control measure. You need the ability to analyze data generated by those scientific studies in a productive way. You need the experience and ability to identify and evaluate process deviations and spoilage incidents. Under the low acid canned foods, you get into quality as well through the requirements for commercial sterility. Not so in the FSMA umbrella, but still an important point. An ability to document everything. Nothing really happens unless it's properly documented and available for review at a later date. Other key competencies that I feel, I added this myself, are people skills. Your processing authority better be able to communicate effectively with folks that they're trying to help. Good communication, both written and verbal skills, are a must for a processing authority. Leadership qualities. You're going to be presiding over a team of experts, people that really know what they're doing relative to the implant operations. So you need to be able to lead that team and to teach them, have that teaching ability, and create better understanding and knowledge of the folks that are in your team. The ability to evaluate, and this I got from a guidance document within the low acid canned food regulations. The ability to evaluate skills and limitations of processor and adjust accordingly to assure understanding of the critical factors, how to control, monitor, and document CCPs. I cannot emphasize enough how important this is. We're all scientists and engineers and so on, and I can see it in our group. We tend to talk to each other and try to talk in the same way, technical, highly technical way to the folks that we're trying to help out, and it's not necessarily the best way to go about it if that person or group of persons are not at the same technical level. You need to assess that situation and provide information in a way that is understandable and will result in they being able to execute the control measure in an effective way. So the regulations mandate, and I think we're all in agreement, that a processing authority or qualified individual must preside over the design, validation, and implementation, monitor, and verification of the food safety plan or the specific control measure. However, at least in my opinion, not one person possesses all knowledge, facilities, and competencies needed to execute all functions assigned to a processing authority. And this is, I'm calling it my opinion, but if you look at the Codex guidance documents, if you look at the National Advisory Committee guidance documents on validation, they all talk about the need for a team effort and a team concept to get these, these efforts together and to be successful implementing it. So when I look at how our young professionals within the National Food Laboratory become processing authorities, I kind of outlined that path. And it started obviously with academic education. We look at folks when we have people with various degrees and experiences, but a food science degree, particularly in the area of microbiology or engineering, is really helpful to begin with. Training courses, and I have a slide at the end of the presentation with many training courses that we'd recommend and use. Mentorship, I cannot emphasize enough the necessity to have mentors. The reason that I'm here today standing before you is because I had the best mentors in the industry, and I'm not afraid to mention them. Some of them are right here in this room. Dane Bernard, Jenny Scott, Keith Ito. I mean, I couldn't get any better than that. So I take pride in making an effort to do the same and pass it along in providing that to our young folks. In-plant experience. You cannot become a processing authority just working in the lab like I mentioned before. You need to go out there and experience the plant environment. You need a soundboard. A lot of our customers, experts process authorities, call me all the time because they need that soundboard. You're making decisions that may impact public health, that may cost millions of dollars to your company. It is tough to do that on your own. You oftentimes need to talk to somebody else. And participation in trade meetings such as this is essential, I believe, to keep your skills sharp and learn the latest in technology and science. However, in my personal opinion, there's not a single training course or qualifying exam followed by a certificate that would make you a process authority. Now, as I put that on my computer, I'm not kidding you. An email came from an offering on a course that said, become a process authority by taking this course. So I went like, wow. Experience and adequate facilities, access to other experts is more difficult to measure, but is equally or more important than that training course. However, a background evaluation by an expert panel akin to what the Almond Board of California is doing may be a viable option. There's some, and like I mentioned, that's what popped up in my screen at one point. So I just want to finish with mention a little bit of the challenges on new non-low acid canned food processes that processing authorities may face in the near future. Obviously, these are FSMA driven and they encompass a large number of different food categories, low water activity foods, baked goods, extruded products, dry pasta, refrigerated frozen products, etc. And what are some of those challenges? Well, the biggest one that we encounter all the time is that this is legacy equipment, not designed as a kill step. So it doesn't possess all the bells and whistles in terms of monitoring the process that you need in a pasteurizer or a sterilizer, etc. So when I'm listening to Tim's presentation and he's talking about the biodeactivator, forgive me for not, getting the term correctly, but that makes a lot of sense to me because in the context of that piece of equipment, you can include the necessary features that you need to control and validate that intervention. You have, in many instances, you don't have the ability to monitor the product temperature itself. It becomes very difficult to do in an extruder or a drying oven, etc. Very, very difficult to do. You have, of course, the risk of post-process contamination. This is a big item, and Nancy pointed out very clearly that the location of the kill step within the structure of the facility is very important to prevent this situation. You have new and previously undefined critical factors. You may have things like dew point or evaporative cooling and things of that nature that you have to contend with that you may not have done before. Plant personnel may not be all that familiar with the requirements of operating a pasteurization or a sterilization process, so they need to get up to speed in those particular areas. Obviously, difficulties in the low water activity area with defining a lot and clean breaks. So, in conclusion, the challenges presented to the processing authority in non-low acid canned foods applications are different, but the principles and requirements are quite similar. The processing authority should work within the context of a team, should be an expert on the specific process, and no one can be an expert on everything. The processing authority first and foremost objective is to protect public health. Processing authority assures that the production facility is in compliance with government regulations, whether it's low-acid canned food or not. A certification process for a processing authority may be desirable, but would be difficult or impossible to implement and manage. So I'll leave you with that thought. That's my personal opinion. Be happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
Talking about the laboratory for conducting the tests necessary for the validation, what are the requirements of the laboratory?
Well, there is, if you're talking about regulatory requirements and so on, for specific area of validation or process authority work, there's not specific requirements that I'm aware of. We follow ISO standards in our laboratories for our analytical work. We have qualified technicians and experts. Other than that, I cannot answer you with any other. There's a number of certificates that we use, but they're specific for different analytical work, not necessarily for the whole picture of validation and processing authority work.